What is the fastest you have ever seen a new coworker get fired? On my first day at the new job, I was eager to make a good impression. After a few hours, I politely asked my supervisor for a short break and a small space in the storage closet to put down my prayer rug. The request was simple, but the reaction was anything but. Within minutes, I was called into the manager's office and told that my request was inappropriate and disruptive. They fired me on the spot. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that asking for a brief moment to pray would lead to such a harsh and immediate termination. Feeling humiliated and wronged, I decided to take action. I filed a discrimination lawsuit against the company. It wasn't just about me. It was about standing up for the right to practice my religion without fear of retribution. Months passed, and the case went to court. The evidence was clear, and the judge ruled in my favor. The company was ordered to pay a substantial settlement for their discriminatory actions. The payout was so large that it significantly strained their finances. About 6 months later, the company had gone bankrupt, unable to recover from the financial hit of the lawsuit. I felt a deep sense of justice. In the end, their own unfairness led to their downfall. What's the best instant karma moment you've witnessed? One evening at my local diner, I noticed a man in a flashy suit who seemed to think he was above everyone else. He was being obnoxious, snapping his fingers at the waitress and loudly complaining about everything. The final straw was when he spilled his drink and demanded she clean it up while mocking her. Just then, the cook, a burly man with a no-nonsense attitude, stepped out of the kitchen. He walked over to the suited man and said, "Hey, why don't you try being a decent human being?" The suited man laughed and sneered. "Why don't you mind your own business, chef?" Without missing a beat, the cook picked up a nearby pitcher of water and, with a straight face, poured it over the man's head. The entire diner went silent for a second, then burst into laughter. The suited man, drenched and humiliated, stood up angrily, but before he could do anything, the cook added, "And don't bother coming back. You're banned." Watching that arrogant customer get what he deserves was the best case of instant karma I've ever seen. The entire diner cheered, and the atmosphere was lighter for the rest of the evening. Justice, served with a side of humor, made it a moment to remember. What's the most satisfying act of revenge you've ever heard of? My boss was notorious for taking credit for his employees' hard work. For years, he rode on the success of others, using their ideas and projects to climb the corporate ladder. He was smug and arrogant, believing he was untouchable. I had been working on a major project for months, pouring my heart and soul into it. As expected, when the project was a success, my boss took all the credit during a company-wide meeting. He even went as far as to receive a bonus for his exceptional work. I decided it was time for a little payback. I gathered all the evidence of my contributions, emails, drafts, and documented meetings where I had presented the ideas. I then anonymously sent this information to the company's board of directors. Around the same time, I also found out he had been fudging some financial reports to make himself look even better. I included this evidence in my anonymous tip. The timing was perfect, because the company was about to conduct its annual audit. While my boss was on vacation, enjoying the fruits of his labor, the board received the package. They launched an investigation and discovered the truth about his deceit. By the time he returned, he was called into an emergency meeting. He was fired on the spot for fraud and misrepresentation. What's the most satisfying way you've seen someone handle a disrespectful step-parent? I lived with my father in a house that had been in my mother's family for generations. After my mom passed away, my father remarried a woman named Linda. She moved in with her son, and it didn't take long for problems to arise. Linda quickly made herself at home, redecorating and moving things around without asking. She insisted her son should have my room because it was bigger and had better lighting. When I protested, she said it was only fair since she and her son were now part of the family. The worst part was when she took down all the family heirlooms and photos, replacing them with her own decorations and pictures. I confronted her about it, but she dismissed me, saying it was her house now and I should just accept the changes. Fed up, I decided to take action. I gathered all the legal documents proving the house was in my name, a fact she was unaware of. I sat her down and explained that while she was welcome to stay, she needed to respect the house's history and my rights as the owner. She scoffed at first, but when I showed her the paperwork, her demeanor changed. She tried to argue, but I stood firm. I told her if she couldn't respect the house and its history, she and her son would have to leave. From that day on, she and her son kept to their own space, and I restored the house to its original state. Justice was served and peace returned to the household. What's the biggest lie you were told as a child? When I was 12, I was sent upstairs and told not to come down for an hour. The next week, my dad went to Cyprus for an amazing job where he'd earn 6 figures and send us a lot of money. But months later, he stopped calling me. It broke my heart, but I knew Dad was busy and just didn't have time. Sometime later, things like jewelry started disappearing from the house, but I never knew why. My mom started not eating some days because she said it was healthy for her. That year, she took me to Pizza Express for my birthday, but she wasn't hungry for some reason. Well, I'm now 19, and it turns out my dad lied and was in so much debt that police came to arrest him, and so I was sent upstairs. This 6-figure job was him running away and leaving my mother with his debt. So she started selling her heirloom jewelry, and we were so poor my mom starved to feed me. The Pizza Express was her using a voucher that got me pizza for $8, and although she was stressed and hungry, she had free tap water. I can't believe how my mom handled this whilst giving me lovely memories of laughing at dinner and going for a walk to the park as a holiday.
What was banned in your school because of a crazy scandal? Shaving your head for cancer. If you had cancer yourself, they would make you wear a school-colored bandana or a wig. This was done to preserve the school image of my private all-girls school, as the principal deemed bald girls to be disgraceful. A girl in our year actually had cancer and lost her hair, so she wore a bandana to school. As a show of support, this emo girl decided to shave her head for cancer awareness. The school was all for it, despite the teachers threatening her if she did it. Despite the threats, we held a fundraiser and then had the actual shaving of her head at school. The girl then refused to cover her newly bald head and was sent home for the day. She proceeded to refuse to cover her head at all because she said it's nothing to be ashamed of, and this sent the principal irate. She was suspended until she agreed to wear a bandana or a wig. Eventually, she missed so much school that her parents and the superintendent had a big sit-down. He sided with our school rules, and in the end, the girl agreed to wear a wig. The next day, she turned up in a Joan of Arc wig to symbolize herself standing up and rebelling.
Has the weird kid in your school ever stood up to his bully? One of my classmates in sophomore year had autism, and hence was picked on a lot, specifically by this one douchebag. Douchebag would steal this kid's stuff, spread rumors about him, humiliate him, and turn him into the butt of the joke in front of others, and other nasty things which left this kid crying on many occasions. There was one specific instance, however, where douchebag totally crossed the line. One day, one of our teachers walked in with a shaved head. Douchebag immediately yelled out that the teacher looked like the autistic kid's mother, who was terminally ill with cancer. The whole class went silent and the kid just left. He came back in the next day, and at lunchtime, shit went down. The kid walked over and demanded an apology from douchebag, who just laughed and threatened to beat the kid up. In this threat, douchebag forgot one simple thing. This kid was 6'7", 250 pounds. What followed was the kid slamming douchebag's own food tray over his head, then beating him with so much rage that 3 teachers had to pull him off. He was suspended, but douchebag left him alone after that. Military veterans, what's your most memorable war experience? While walking through a completely deserted village, one of my team members noticed a little girl lying down in the distance. She seemed to be alive, but was covered in blood head to toe and had her leg trapped underneath a pillar. We rushed over to her, and thankfully she was breathing, but the look in her eyes when we showed up was one of pure fear. In an attempt to let her know we were here to help, one of my team members sat next to her and gave her some food and water. We all saw the large amount of blood she had lost, and so we got to work on moving this pillar, which was planted directly on her shin. However, our first attempt to move it caused the girl to scream in agony so hard I'll never forget it. That's when we decided that come hell or high water, we were freeing her. We all collectively imagined that this little girl was our daughter, the adrenaline kicked in, and we started going past our perceived strength limits to move this pillar. Inch by inch we raised this pillar, just high enough for one of us to very quickly pull this girl out before letting the pillar thud back on the ground. Has the quiet kid at your school ever stood up to a bully? In my sophomore year, there was a quiet, introverted kid named Alex who had a passion for collecting comic books. Because of his unique interests, he was often picked on, especially by a bully named Jason. Jason would steal Alex's comics, spread nasty rumors, and humiliate him in front of others, leaving Alex in tears on many occasions. One day, Jason took things too far. Our teacher came in with a new haircut, and Jason loudly joked that the teacher looked like Alex's dad, who was known to have lost his hair due to chemotherapy. The classroom went silent, and Alex's face turned red with anger. The next day at lunch, things escalated. Alex, usually quiet and reserved, walked over to Jason and demanded an apology. Jason laughed and threatened to beat Alex up. What Jason forgot was that Alex, despite his quiet nature, was 6'5" and built like a linebacker. Without hesitation, Alex slammed his food tray over Jason's head, then tackled him to the ground. The fury and strength in Alex's actions were so intense that it took 3 teachers to pull him off. Alex was suspended for his actions, but Jason never bothered him again. What's the biggest case of the butterfly effect you've ever experienced? During my freshman year, I walked into the wrong classroom. Embarrassed, I quickly left, but a girl laughed and said, "Better luck next time." The next week, I saw her in the cafeteria and waved. She waved back, starting a casual greeting routine. For 2 years, we exchanged smiles and brief conversations. By junior year, we ended up in the same class. One day, as we chatted, a classmate asked how we knew each other. My heart raced as I realized I couldn't remember her name. Just as I was about to admit it, she laughed and said, "Funny story, we've been waving and talking for years without knowing each other." Everyone laughed, breaking the ice. We introduced ourselves. Her name was Emma. We became close friends and started studying together. One evening, Emma confessed she had feelings for me. I admitted I felt the same. We started dating, and our relationship grew stronger. Years later at our wedding, Emma revealed she had waved at me by mistake, but it led to our happiest day. The butterfly effect had brought us together and changed our lives forever. Have you ever been scared to the core of your soul? What's the story? When I was in college, my friend Anna disappeared. Her stepfather, who seemed devastated, reached out to everyone, including me, suspecting her ex-boyfriend Mark. One evening, he came to my apartment. Instead of asking about Mark, he revealed his violent past, boasting about crimes he'd committed. It left me deeply unsettled. After he left, he kept insisting on meeting me alone, claiming I knew more about Mark. I refused, Feeling increasingly uneasy, things escalated, and I had campus security escort me everywhere. A few weeks later, Anna's stepfather was arrested for unrelated crimes. Detectives interviewed me, warning me to stay away from him. Months later, Anna was found alive. She had run away, fearing her stepfather, who had been abusive. She discovered incriminating evidence against him and feared for her life. His unrelated arrest saved her, and likely me, from a grim fate. Reuniting with Anna was overwhelming. She thanked me for being cautious, which helped keep her safe. The fear I felt turned into relief and gratitude, knowing we both escaped a potential tragedy.